And it feels like not a change in direction, but it's just another way to like put the layer, like the digital layer on top of reality, which is what this is. And this is like an amazing form factor for it
And
so
for people
far.
listening, he's putting his iPhone up, right?
Right. This is like almost like you would think this is the perfect thing, like this like little slab. But I think it feels like a departure because the form factor is clunky at the moment, where you think
it feels more intrusive as well. Like it's a
this
barrier. It's not just something in your pocket. It's literally over your eyes. The gateway to the soul. I've heard it called. So, but so it is a little bit.
They're not gonna. I don't think they're gonna fail over a long period of time.
I
don't think so.
I agree. All right, welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. You got Jack Butcher and Bilal Zaidi here today. Trung is unfortunately not here. He's in Athens doing his history professor fan antics. And I just saw him in London a few days ago, Jack. I hope you won't mind me saying that. People be tracking him down on the streets nowadays.
He's on his school trip.
Exactly. He's on his school trip, taking his kid around. I mean, that is a pretty sick trip for how old is his kid? 4, maybe?
5, I think. 5 or 6.
5, but that is a sick trip. London, Athens.
Where else is he going?
I think it was those two. I'm not sure. I think it's those two, yeah. Maybe there's another one I've forgotten, but yeah, I did see Trung last week, man. Absolutely smashed it. I'm in London at the moment, as you can tell from my handheld and the curtains behind me. But yeah, Trung and I finally got. I wasn't sure we were going to see each other, and I just snuck out like 9 p.m. and he was on dad mode, like sinking 4 drinks before I could even have one. You know what I mean? So just a Trung special. Shouting in the restaurant vibe, everything you'd expect for a meetup with Trung. Now, all jokes aside, he was on good form, man. Jack, what's going on your side, mate? Since last time you finished the Christie's auction, yeah?
Been a while, mate. Yeah, Christie's is done. We did 3 pieces at Christie's and 126 pieces by ourselves the week after.
Wait. You did 3 and 126. Is that? Was that by purpose, just for contrast, or what?
Yeah. So there's 3 pieces from a 152-piece collection that sold at Christie's, and then Jalil built the auction infrastructure for selling the rest of them ourselves, and the physical components. I'm going back to LA to hand finish all the physical prints in the next couple of weeks. So, man, it was good. We did couple of days in New York, just missed you, but did a couple events, met up with a bunch of people. A few NIA listeners dropped into a couple of those events. We did a panel at Christie's.
Who'd you meet, man? Do you remember anyone I've spoken to on there? You might not remember.
I'm terrible with names. There was someone I met at Soho House. I feel bad. I don't remember everyone's name. Met a few people, but we did something at Christie's and we did something at Soho House. Met a bunch of people from NIA, VV, amazing. Like it was a good time. And then
it's a good crew in New York, man. Definitely.
Mate, good people for sure, yeah. Celia came with me for the Christie stuff, which was fun to get back to New York. And yeah, man, just been back at it, head down for the last couple of weeks working. And then actually I'm going to be in New York again next week. So maybe we'll no, you're still in the UK, right? Yeah.
I'll be in Portugal next week. But
nice.
That's amazing, man. Well, congrats on that. I don't know if you heard the segment me and Trung did, but we tried to cover it. But we needed you, obviously, there to do the full thing. But I guess the question for me is, going into it, this is the first time you've done this with Christie's, right? So, and something of this scale in terms of like an established art institution like Christie's.
Yeah.
I know you've done a bunch of different stuff, but they're like one of the most prestigious ones, if not the number one. So I'm curious going in what your expectations were like versus what it ended up being like, that whole experience.
It was good. They were, it was good working with them. They have it's called Christie's 3.0, which is like their digital marketplace. So it was good working with them. They're like it's just a completely different environment. I think people are trying to understand this world, and like the reason I think it was interesting for Czech specifically is like that is the like stamp of verification in the fine art world a lot of times is like which gallery or which auction house or which like medium between, artist and buyer authenticates the work. So that was like, for the story, I thought that was pretty interesting to do something with those guys. And hopefully first of a few things we do together. There's they put up piece in the window on
I saw
not
that
6th but 42nd Street. I think that was cool.
Mate,
to
that
see
is
it
sick.
in person.
But just
incredible.
I saw Celia had written. I couldn't put it together if it was like the day before. I didn't notice if it was like the day of or from a few weeks before that you retweeted. And it was maybe a picture I saw of you guys from the free thing that you did in the past that we've talked about in the pod. Like you did a free, you actually paid to do an art gallery thing for yourself. And this is obviously with Christie's. It's very like the opposite end of the scale. And that was really cool to see, man. That's just like the contrast of the progression sort of thing.
It was fun, man. It's so weird though, because everything happens on the internet normally, right? So it was like odd, out like fish out of water vibe a little bit.
I could imagine. Yeah, because it's you're so internet native as well. It's like everything you're doing is just so you're like moving fast pace and everything. But really cool to see that coming together, mate. Congrats on that. Hopefully see more of those in the future. So congrats. And then so for people listening who are wondering why we're not talking about Apple Vision Pro, we are going to talk about it. That's going to be most of the show. We just wanted to knock out a couple of these catch-up topics first. I was also going to share, so I'm on this 6-week trip, which has been amazing. I'm about to hit the halfway mark this week when I get to Lisbon. Went to Mario. If anyone reads The Generalist, friend of the pod, friend of the show, it was his wedding. So we went to the Amalfi Coast, had a great time there. Absolutely incredible. Berlin had unlimited shawarmas there. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, you went to Berlin, nice.
Yeah, went to Berlin for the weekend first, and then I've been in London for last week, did my birthday here, first time in 10 years, and it was really fun as well. So it's been kind of a whirlwind for me. I'm just playing catch up with a lot of stuff. And then we're going now to Lisbon, and then another wedding in Italy, North Italy this time. So kind of a crazy Euro trip, but been a lot of fun, man. And the last thing to mention is we're going to talk about the Apple stuff in a second, but Luton got promoted to the Premier League. I know we talk about sports once in a while here, but for people who don't follow, Luton is a tiny little team, right? Like that. I think they were 4 divisions down like 5 years ago or something like that. And they've gone up every year. And I think maybe one year they were in the same division or something. They've getting to the Premier League now next season. And it's a crazy story here because they only have like 10,000 people that can go in the stadium. And you literally have to go, have you seen the picture? You have to go through like the staircase takes you past someone's garden, and then you're in the away stand. So it's just not going to work for like Premier League
that's class,
level
man.
of thing. Like, but it's an incredible
Chelsea
story.
Playing away at Luton.
Like Haaland from Man City. Can you imagine him taking that? It's incredible. But so that's been kind of fun just to see. I saw the end of the season here after following it all year. It was kind of fun to be here for a lot of the cultural stuff. Like FA Cup final was this weekend. I was here and the city was kind of locked down with traffic and stuff, but it was kind of fun to be here for that.
The meritocracy, you love to see it in the British sports.
Meritocracy, with Man City with their unlimited money, but it's true. Anyway, so
hey, what's the Luton ownership situation? I don't have any idea.
I don't actually know fully. I don't actually know. They're not like owned by like Saudis or something like that. From my understanding, I could be completely off, but
they didn't buy a 50 million pounds.
I don't think they've done anything like that. But the one cool thing though is that one player has literally been from that 4 divisions down, and he's made it all the way up to the Premier League, which is super rare, right? Like if you're playing in the 4th division and you get to Premier League, you're not normally the same level of player, so it's kind of crazy.
I never thought the Leicester story would be top to it. Maybe.
Yeah, and you saw Leicester just got relegated too, which is insane too. So after winning the Premier League 7 years ago, and winning the FA Cup, they now just got relegated, which is really sad.
I didn't even know, man. I'm not up on my football. I didn't know they won the FA Cup. That's mental.
Yeah, I think they won the FA Cup a couple of years ago, maybe. I can't remember which year, but Anyway, for the non-football fans, we'll get on to the Apple stuff. But wanted to get that out there because it was kind of on the docket. Jack, what's going on with Apple Vision Pro, man? This is, you're the brand guy here, but obviously we're all into technology. You've already started seeing the Thread boys who pivoted from crypto to AI to VR now. All jokes aside, what did you think about the announcement so far?
Well, I think it was like leaked or anticipated or, presumed that they were going to announce some product in this vein. I think a lot of people thought it was going to be like Google Glass-esque, like slick, Apple.
Smaller.
Massive, technological leap, like a Google Glass level, like product. But it feels like way closer, at least hardware-wise, to the stuff that's already in market.
What you got behind you there.
Yeah, which I've used 2 or 3 times, honestly. Like my take on it at a high level is just Apple software, OS lock-in, connectivity, network effects, all of that stuff is like there's no real comp between any other VR device on the market in my mind and this, because it's like a way more attractive carrot to get you to put the thing on your head, right? It's like to get into the Apple ecosystem versus like the Google Play Store. No offense to that.
No,
it's
of course.
That thing is like horrible to use, to be honest.
Yeah, of course.
The usability of it,
you have trust that Apple will make it more slick in the experience, right? And
it will be like the software would be better, the hardware is better. I think it's like 4K in each eye, which is like just probably you can't like differentiate between that and reality. We're pretty close when it's that close to your face. And if anyone wants a proper breakdown of it, you should watch the MK VHD. That guy just
Marcus Brownlee, the GOAT. Yeah. He's literally the GOAT for any sort of like tech reviews.
Little tech breakdown.
Incredible, mate. Yeah. Well, I'll call out a couple of the things that you just mentioned, a bunch of great ones there. So one of the things I saw, they were using the phrase spatial computing, which is, I thought probably people have used that before, but I thought that was interesting framing. They weren't saying like the first headline wasn't VR, AR, whatever. They talked about spatial, which I thought was an interesting thing. We can talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
And like you said, it wasn't like a Google Glass thing. It looks much more like an Oculus, really, in terms of form factor. But I thought what was interesting is it looks like the vision for it is really moving from, initially more like a VR experience, but to more an AR, augmented reality experience. So where, you're already seeing the room and you're immersing yourself within the room. And it's really merging those two things together, which I feel like Oculus isn't really that, right? Oculus, you're just stuck in there pretty much.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. Like if it's a little disorienting, you put the devices or you can see your controllers in there. And then I think when you're setting it up, you like see the room in this like really gritty, lo-fi, like it looks like a security camera type thing feeding into your eyes.
Little GoPro vibe. Yeah.
And then you're like trapped in it, which I think you fatigue from that really quickly too. Is like after 10 minutes, it just like feels incredibly unnatural, at least to me.
Yeah.
Also think they like the spatial computing thing is interesting because they went like, I would say the positioning of the Meta Quest thing is way more gaming, right? It's like go straight for like
hardcore users like playing those things.
Yeah, it's like Wii style, like hyper novelty. I was talking to someone about this yesterday. The irony in the VR stuff, the VR gaming thing is like only really fun if other people are there. Like watching someone looking like a dickhead doing the boxing thing, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's
like
funny.
What makes it funny. Yeah. But like doing that on your own, you're kind of like, what am I doing? It's very, at least my experience of it is like setting that thing up and standing in a room. It just feels like a little dystopian.
Yeah.
I think they're going way more of the, infinite canvas. Like this stuff, the stuff that you would do on Apple devices is no longer confined to a rectangle screen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or TV.
That's basically, I think that's a smart play by them, right? Obviously that just, and the pro positioning too. I think that's an intentional, like, that was a part of the Marcus Brownlee video where it's like, this is for early adopters, for people that will like, chuck a bunch of cash on this thing and just like play with it and see what it's for.
$3,500 for people. That's the initial pricing, I think, and it will come out next year. The line he used, which I thought was a great summary, he said, this is really for rich early adopters. It's like a toy for the rich, or like I put in early adopters here, and developers muse. I thought that was a nice way to summarize, because if you're a developer, this does feel, I mean, for anyone who's interested in technology, this is a big deal. It's not like it's just a slight improvement to what's been out there. it does feel like a much better experience already from the visuals. And people like him, who I do really trust his opinion, and we can share the video. I think it's like a 20-minute video from MKBHD where he breaks it down and talks about him actually using it, not just looking at a demo sort of thing. And that was really interesting. The other thing he kind of mentioned is you said that one you've got behind you, you have the controllers or something, right? You have something for your hands. This one I don't think has anything for the hands. It's controlled by your eyes, your voice, and your hands. And he talks about like pinching or something like that.
The camera on the exterior is watching your hand motion. Yeah, right. Incredible.
And then the ones looking at you are looking at your eyes. And that, he said, was the closest. He's not normally the overhyping stuff. He's actually quite level-headed about it. And he said that was the closest thing he's seen to magic that he's seen in a long time, where it was tracking your eyes incredibly well, where you're kind of just controlling things, looking up at stuff. And I'm trying to think, when I've done this in the past using a VR headset, how did we do it? I guess you kind of move your head up, but then you probably have to press something. You have to press a button somewhere in the hand or something.
You have these things, the handles have like lasers basically. So you're it has like a straight line that you can move around, and you like type with that. It feels like laborious, basically, like you're typing, like you're like pointing the thing at all the different keys.
It's like when you're trying to put your password on a Apple TV, using that little
activating
remote.
The thing. Fuck.
Jesus
exactly
Christ.
Like that. Oh yeah, the old Xbox Live login.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought that was quite interesting, the way he said, just the visual part. And there was also in the demo, you could see there was like a translucent image. So if someone's looking at you wearing it, they're kind of seeing, I don't know if it's actually your eyes or a rendering of your eyes or something like that.
It's a screen. It's an outward facing screen that's so like looking at your eyes and then like projecting them back out.
Yeah, that's a little crazy. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, pretty cool. And so, I'm just seeing if there's anything else from my notes here, what we talked about. The other couple things, connecting to a Mac I wrote here because I thought that was cool. Did you see he said, like you could basically look at it and it's connecting to the Mac, and then you could essentially project your screen to as large as you want, versus like right now in my office, I have that massive screen just for all those Excel sheets that I'm going through or whatever. And this would just be, in the demos you see it too, like entertainment wise, you can essentially make the screen, the whole wall be your screen. And that's quite cool. When you've used the VR headsets in the past, I guess the biggest criticism has been the fatigue you get from it. Like just it starts hurting your eyes and your head. Yeah. So that to me is the biggest one here, is are they doing enough to combat that? And we won't really know that until people are using it for a long time. Do you feel that when you've used it as well, you get like a bit of a headache?
Yeah, it's more for the eyes though than the weight of it. I think this thing is going to be, I think there's like metal, and because of the processing power of this thing, I think it's a little heavier than the other stuff that's on the market too.
Yeah,
so
which is quite interesting. And so it sounds like this, a lot of people have described it as like not even the first iPhone or first whatever. It's like the zero. It's like it's going to come. Yeah, it's going to come on with just Apple apps. What they showed today were just Apple apps. Maybe by the time it's launched, they'll have some, Apple developer apps as well, which will be cool. But just it's really like a new platform with a new form factor that does have incredible potential. I think they talked, you could see them taking a little shot, or at least talking about how they're going to change work, which was interesting because I think Facebook has a whole, part of their positioning has got stuff around working and the future of work and all that stuff. So that's interesting. But I think the one that's the lowest hanging fruit for most people is going to be entertainment and gaming, like most of these things. But I think there's a lot of potential for that as well. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff.
Another positioning thing for them is like Facebook is like harvesting
privacy
data.
Stuff,
You're
right?
The product, right?
Yeah.
Like I think this thing is so invasive and so different of an experience that fact alone of a Facebook branded device that you're like strapping into your eyes, I think people have hesitation around that. And obviously Apple leaned massively into privacy encryption.
Yeah, smart.
We don't. And that to me means like, Yeah, that to me means like they have to make compelling products. Like obviously Facebook is a compelling product, but it's a different.
They can have an
like
8 out of 10 and just make money from ads sort of thing, yeah?
Right, exactly. Yeah. Versus like you have to ship a product that people want to use, that sustains itself. Yeah, that sustains itself. And they obviously have they know what people use already, and it's just like this is a effort to just transition people into a different environment using the same stuff. And obviously V2, V3 will be like new behaviors, like the same. I think they're calling it Vision OS, right? Where the actual mechanisms within the operating system will inform what can be built. And like the Apple, like they announce it at these developer conferences for a reason, right? Because people will now be shutting themselves in a room trying to figure out what to have ready by the time this thing launches. I wonder what I wonder how far in advance people get to work on that stuff, because it'll have obviously
I saw,
App Store.
I forgot this guy's name. I'm going to pull it up. I saved this tweet here. Have you heard of, is it Rewind? One second. Rewind for Apple Vision Pro. I don't know anything about this. So Rewind AI, a search engine for your life. Rewind records everything you've seen, said, or heard and makes it searchable. And that guy, I mean, he's kind of an established dude. That's the only reason I thought, like, he's not just some random charlatan. He had co-founder of Optimizely that went to 120 million ARR. So he's like an established founder who's got this new company. But if you just think about that, like the Minority Report or Terminator vibes, like Terminator, let's say back in the day, Terminator, you're walking down the street and you're capturing all this data, like, oh, there's a tree, there's a person, there's a face, blah, 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 a car, and equivalent of, that idea of second brain. Could you imagine this idea of a second brain, but actually this input coming in throughout your whole life, which is super scary for most people and creepy. But I
mean, that's really what iOS does. It's just there's more
input
action. There's an action between that, right? Like the ability to search your photos by a text input. That was crazy when you figured that out, right? Where you write like car in your photos and it will filter everything that's a car. It doesn't, like the machine learning stuff.
Yeah.
And this one is like, you're not going to be walking down the street in this thing. Just, you're not. Like, you may be sitting on your sofa or in your office chair or whatever. I don't know. Maybe like people are trying to get ahead of the narrative, but
go on.
Yeah, that feels like something that Apple would, and that's normally what happens, right? The developer community goes and builds all this stuff, and Apple's like, yoink, that's a good feature, we'll have that, and just send you to zero overnight.
Well, you saw if people have listened to Trung's solo episode from last week, he talks about when Steve Jobs was first creating an iPhone, he just wanted to create a better phone that the phone didn't drop. Like, he didn't even necessarily want all these apps and stuff that came later. He thought that was a bad idea. He was worried about being able to control the experience, and all he wanted was to make sure the phone didn't drop, which in hindsight seems ridiculous, right? Like, what? And this is the best, product guy of all time, arguably, right? So this is kind of crazy to think, like, with this form factor, what could come, things we're not necessarily thinking about. I do think from my understanding, though, because they've leaned into this AR, augmented reality thing, which is mixed reality, you're walking and you're in your room, you're seeing stuff, not just in your own little universe in virtual reality. I think that is closer to, let's say, a Google Glass or something that came some time ago, but was too soon almost. And like, to put it bluntly from my side, I think Google doesn't have the cool factor that an Apple does, brand-wise. I feel like if Apple created that Google Glass or something closer to it, maybe it would have had longer lasting, more longevity anyway. And I think that, from my understanding, that is probably the direction they'll eventually go in anyway. It's like, this is the first massive headset, and over time it will get smaller and smaller, that you might have glasses, you might have sunglasses or whatever like that.
And have a little injection going.
Yeah, exactly, to the dome, exactly. So I feel like that seems more likely in terms of actually people using. I've always felt like virtual reality sounds cool, but augmented reality is really more useful in a way. Like, just straight up, if you're driving down the street or you're walking down the street, you're on a bike and you need Google Maps, like, that is actually a helpful experience where you're not looking down at your phone. You're just saying like, oh, turn right here, instead of like having to triangulate looking down every 2 seconds. that was the only thing I'd say from the demo. Like there were some cool use cases on there, but I'd love to see way more use cases. And I think the entertainment one was interesting. Like that you could see visually, like, oh, you look up at this wall and just create a massive theater screen. And then the cool part about that was you could change the background to be like you're in space or something and you're watching, you know, Star Wars or whatever, right? That's kind of sick. But I just think actually seeing like all of these things, we've talked about it since episode 0, it's all about real use cases. And sometimes things seem really cool and then you're like, well, what's left with it? Like when you bought that Quest or whatever behind you, you're like, what am I going to use it for? And then you use it 3 times and then you're like, well, I don't really even need this really. So it will be interesting to see with the advanced technology, can they actually translate that into more use cases? I think if anyone has a chance to do it, it's obviously Apple. Like they make a 10 out of 10 product and they'll get the developers excited. Developers will create stuff. But what about you? Do you think this is actually something long term is here to stay, or do you think it's again like still very niche for the moment?
I think it will translate into something. That was a comment in that Marcus Brownlee video where it's like that you could see their product roadmap play out, where it's like the SE, the affordable one, is on the cards at a certain point. As you were talking, I was just thinking about this idea of screen time. This might be a chart for Trung to plot out. It's like that's one of their metrics, right? It's just like have people spend more time in the Apple ecosystem. And I think that's why virtual reality in general hasn't taken off. It's like there are very few people that can strap like goggles to their face without any like view of what's going on around them for hours and hours and hours. And it just made me think of like, you know, when you walk around New York and there are people like literally, they can almost like sense what's around them without looking up. There's people like looking at their phones.
Because the peripheral
just going
vision.
through the world. Yeah. And like we're almost like now evolved to be able to like navigate the environment while being almost 100% immersed in this. And that feels like not a change in direction, but it's just another way to like put the layer, like the digital layer on top of reality, which is what this is. And this is like an amazing form factor for it.
And
so
for people
far.
listening, he's putting his iPhone up, right?
Right. This is like almost like you would think this is the perfect thing, like this like little slab. But they're obviously trying to push that. But like the watch, I think, is another example, is like keeps you in the ecosystem even if the phone is not in front of you. It's like connectivity, is access to like, even you can make calls from the phone and stuff now, right? It's like just, I think it feels like a departure because the form factor is clunky at the moment, where you think
it feels more intrusive as well. Like it's a barrier. It's not just something in your pocket. It's literally over your eyes. The gateway to the soul, I've heard it called, you know, so, but it is a little bit.
They're not going to, I don't think they're going to fail over a long period of time. I don't think so.
I agree. It's exciting because it's one of those things we've seen for ages. Like people into technology have been like, oh, VR, AR, of course, yeah, it looks cool. The best thing that's really come out of AR, really, honestly, is like TikTok and Snapchat stuff. You know, that's really when I say like, best, I mean actually people using. Like originally, the most used AR thing was Snapchat putting bunny ears on your face. Do you know what I mean? Like that's
right, and that's like I was just gonna say like that. That's like inverted AR, really, right? It's like putting it into the screen versus like what I think the spatial computing frame is like expanding your ability to interact with the interface versus like merging images that are on a screen already. Yeah, like AR, that was the definition of it. Like back in the advertising days, it was like, we're going to do an AR filter, Snapchat filter for this.
Yeah. It was like the basic stuff. Yeah. But I think that comes back to, you mentioned they're calling it Vision OS, which if you just take a step back and think like that is operating system for your vision. That's kind of mental, is it? If you just think about, like if you compare that to what are the other OSs, like obviously Mac OS, iOS, but this is the first time you're seeing like a part of a human's, you know, perception is vision, right? It's not like hearing OS. I guess, you know, AirPods are close to that, but they're not. AirPods are really just an extension of, you know, they're just headphones, obviously.
Yeah.
But Vision OS is actually the first time, from what I'm thinking out loud here, is just actually within the human psyche. That is, you're looking day to day and it's in your frame. And so that is quite an interesting idea. Yeah, very sci-fi. I was just going to read one tweet really quickly from Jason Fried, obviously big in the tech world, CEO of 37 Signals, Basecamp dude. So this was quite interesting. I don't know if you saw this tweet, but Rafa, editor, you can put this on the screen so I don't have to share my screen right now. But he essentially is contrasting the two big announcements of the last 6 months. One is Chat-GPT from OpenAI, and now this from Apple. He said, what an interesting moment. We're staring at two distinctly different visions of the future. They may coexist, but they are radically different takes on what's modern and what's current and where things are headed. One vision gets the UI out the way. The other vision is UI everywhere you look. One vision gets the computer out the way. The other vision mounts a computer on your face. One vision is get it and go. One vision is get it and stay. One vision is about information. The other is about immersion. One vision is natural and understands you. The other vision requires new methods of interaction that you have to learn and master. One vision feels like an assist. One feels like an obstruction. One vision fits with whatever you already have. One vision requires you to buy something that fits. One vision is simply text. One vision is anything but. One vision feels like before. One vision feels like after, but I'm not sure which is which. I wish reading that was a little wordy with the one vision. I wish it would be like the other, but yeah, you guys can see that for yourself. I was reading like Floyd Mayweather again, but and he did say, and I should add, both are extraordinary in their own ways. But I thought that was quite a cool contrast of two. Both of those can be great things, right? Like we're all using Chat-GPT, or we're using Barely.ai, obviously.
Of course, in this house we use Barely.ai.
Exactly. and obviously we're seeing the magic of, like, I even just on this trip, like the amount I'm using, let's say Chat-GPT on my phone, I'm honestly using a lot more than Google for certain things, more than I thought I would. And it is really like it's a huge improvement. But this other thing is like, yeah, you're looking around, you're not looking down at your phone. It's a completely different take on it. And again, they didn't invent VR, of course, but it's interesting. I also saw Tim Cook talked about being like last mover advantage here, which is, people know the term first mover advantage, probably where someone goes first, messes up a lot of the time, doesn't find product market fit, and you get to learn from them. And in this case, they're quite late to the party, right? Like VR has been around for a long, long time.
Ages,
hasn't hit massive scale. I mean, I guess that's subjective. Scale is, in this case, millions of people.
But it's not like a consumer electronic that you would,
it's not like you go to everyone's house and everyone's got
to own even.
Exactly.
Most people,
exactly.
A lot of people are like, I don't want it. Yeah.
That's the right word, though, you just said there, right? Aspire to own. And that is Apple's brand, right? Aspire to own an iPhone. Even if you're, to put it bluntly, if you're on minimum wage in America, a lot of those people still got an iPhone, right? Like, a lot of them are trying to get an iPhone. They might be saving up or whatever, but that is a luxury, but it's an affordable, in air quotes, luxury, in that you're going to account for it. You're going to say, oh, it's $1,000, but I need an iPhone because that is what I need as an
essential luxury right there.
Essential luxury. That's the right phrase. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I thought that was also interesting that Tim Cook kind of even called it out himself. And I don't know if it was in an interview or what, but he basically said, yeah, I know we're not new here. We're not early at all. We're late to the party. But based on that, we can see all the problems, which is kind of interesting. That gives me actually more confidence that they're going to make it work, because they can see already all the problems, and they're really masters at finding, creative, simple solutions to those big problems. And honestly, sometimes they're not even that good solutions, but they're the best at telling people they're the best at certain things. You know what I mean? And you believe them when they're like, oh, we can, like I use Apple TV. It's not much better than a Chromecast or a Roku or whatever. Like I said, that password entry thing is the worst experience in the world. But I still use it because it's Apple, kind of works. It works out the box.
Right.
Yeah. So anything else? Go for it, Jack.
I was just going to talk about the like early and late, the Chat-GPT versus Vision OS idea, that there's this weird myth maybe that we think that inventing technology will make us use it less in terms of like the time we spend, but that's never really been the case, right? It's like, yeah, I don't know if
you mean that time spent on devices generally just
I
goes
don't know
up.
what the relationship is, but it's like, oh, I can get way more done with Chat-GPT. For most people, that doesn't mean they work, half a day. It means they get twice as much done in a day.
That's
or
true.
Like, oh, this, or like the ability to travel faster over history is not like we travel less. We travel in the same amount of time, but we go double the distance or whatever. Some after hat tip to one of the biggest collectors of checks. His name's Schmripto. He told me this statistic, which I'm not going to get perfectly accurate, but if you bring the price, oh man, I'm probably going to get it totally wrong. Bring the price of something down, like it gets used twice as much, or there's like this inverse correlation to what you think is going to happen.
Price demand curve or something like that.
Yeah. I forget exactly what we were even talking about, but it's just the interesting frame there is these things are supposed to, or like if they're framed as time-saving things, it doesn't necessarily correlate to less time spent. It means more productivity in air quotes, right? Like more people writing Twitter threads on Chat-GPT.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Because everybody, that meme has gotten crazy. I think even Elon Musk was tweeting about that the other week, like how out of control the AI thread boys have gotten on Twitter. It's
you're seeing it all over the shop.
It's like an inception loop, right? It's like if you're like making content with AI, you're in this massive flywheel where you just self-referential, endless content stream.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I guess the last thing to think about here is, I guess any other thoughts on the Apple Vision stuff before we kind of wrap it up? Because I think
I'm going to get one for sure. I'm looking forward to playing around with it. Like,
100%. That's actually a good question. Yeah, is that are we actually going to buy it? I very likely will, to be honest, because we're going to have to wait a little while. It looks like early next year. But yeah, and actually that's the point to talk about. Like this, it's $3,500 price point, right? Like this is its own device. It's not just connected to your iPhone. Like a lot of those devices are basically extensions of your iPhone. I'd say like Apple Watch is close. It's maybe it's its own hardware, but it's the things you can do on your Apple Watch. Most of them you can do on your phone.
And to complete the experience, you need the phone too.
Exactly. You need the phone. Whereas this, you can do it without an iPhone, right? Which is actually quite a big difference, because that means even just technologically and technically, you need the M2 chip on the device, right? Like a lot of other things, you can get away with processing stuff on the supercomputer on your phone and then pass it over through some Bluetooth or whatever. This is its own independent thing. It's gonna just bang out the box. You know what I mean? So that's an interesting part of it. I do think $3,500 is interesting as well, because that's more than most Macs. It's like 3 times the price of an iPhone, pretty much.
It's like a decent MacBook Pro, right? Like a reasonably high-end MacBook Pro.
Yeah, like that's the high end, because you can buy a MacBook Air, I think, for like $1,200 or something, maybe even less nowadays. But it's like $1,000 to $1,500, you get an okay MacBook, or like one that you can use, and then you're gonna soup it up like we do, because obviously that's what you're gonna have the 70 gigabytes of RAM or whatever it is, or terabyte of RAM. Just go hard. I guess
another interesting comparison is like the iPad Pro. I bought the iPad Pro thinking like, oh, this is going to be sick. I'm going to use this every day. I've probably used it 10 times.
Yeah.
Because because of the OS is like, it doesn't, you can't do
the
iPhone,
whole,
you can't do a day's work on it, or I can at least. And like if you're an illustrator, like the output of your work is all in one app on an iPad Pro, it makes sense. Or maybe you can even use like Excel or type emails or whatever. But if you're doing like any heavy creative work, even the file organization on an iPad is just like,
it's not the same.
It's impossible. Like there isn't a finder on it. And I always found that, like, I don't know, for the Pro, I almost wish that they ran the Mac OS on the iPad Pro.
Just a Mac, but with a touchscreen.
Just the form factor is cleaner, So I don't know, maybe it's that situation, but the ability to tap into the MacBook for me feels like it might be able to like jump that gap a little more elegantly than the iPad Pro did. Because that, like, even when they announced new iPads, I'm like, who is buying iPads now?
Yeah.
Like,
I was thinking that, and I came here, and literally my mum, my dad, my sister, my brother-in-law, and their kid, basically everyone's got iPad. And I was like, what? And my mum's
like
been
no
doing
laptops.
Yeah, basically, no. I was just gonna say, my mum literally signed up for a writing course, which is incredible. It's like on like our world of, like we've seen David Perel and our boy Dickie Bush, those guys doing it, hard from COVID times. And then now my mum was like, oh, I found this lady on Facebook, and she's, it's basically like these middle-aged women mostly, and they're like finding a way to express themselves online, and they're in this Facebook group, and they're sharing like poems and stuff. And I was like, wow, this is so cool to see that it's kind of gone on that little curve, and it's finally hit my mum. And she doesn't even have a laptop, man. She's just writing on an iPad, and that's how
the metaverse, man. She's in the metaverse.
She's gonna be strapped onto this for sure. But yeah, so I think the other couple things.
For more poetry.
Yeah. See my mum on Twitter. Also, jokes aside, my dad is smashing it on Twitter. By the way, he's into Pakistani politics.
Let me get that. He was telling me
he's up to almost 3,000 followers, man. He's going hard.
Oh man,
and
he's killing it.
He's really into the politics. He's smashing it. But yeah, the other thing I was gonna say, for the first version of this, it's only a 2-hour battery life, which I thought was actually, understandable, but just in the demos they're showing films, right? Like that's 2 hours already.
But you're going to be watching a film. You can plug the battery in.
Yeah, that's true. That's a fair point. So
I think that the battery life is it'd be interesting to see the decisions that they made, but it's like based on what it does, it's not like you're standing up like doing fruit slashing or whatever that thing is. Right?
Yeah.
So it feels like this early one you can get away with it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And also, they're going to have to find stuff to upgrade later anyway. So this is a perfect. I mean, I'm sure it makes a lot of sense. It's a crazy powerful device that's heavy, but as it gets smaller and smaller, that will probably require less of battery anyway over time. Sugar cube powered Tesla, exactly. There we go. Powered by the Bitcoin somehow. It doesn't even make sense. But
you'll have to get
don't even know
Tron back to talk about the like vertical integration stuff, because I know I read some headlines about that, like the chips, they no dependency on Intel or something. I don't know.
It's M2 chips in this
is all going on there, but that again feels like a built-in advantage that the Metas of the world don't have. Right? They're not running hardware at the scale Apple is, where you have billions of devices, all of these different form factors, all of these just the like stored knowledge in that organization around shipping consumer hardware. It's just insane.
Incredible.
And their distribution is insane. Like it's nuts. I imagine that thing is gonna like blow people's
minds.
Trung would have a good anecdote about the AirPods, right? Everyone takes a piss out of it, and then there's a line. 1,000 people outside every Apple store the day it launches.
The Chanel Nikes or wherever they were, they had.
Right.
Everyone's like making fun, but it's like, people are queuing up for this shit. But no, that's a great point. They did say, I think they estimate they'll sell 1 million units. I guess let's bet over under. I think they're going to sell more than that in the initial, because I think 1 million is probably quite a significant amount. I don't know how many Oculuses have been. That was funny to say. Oculuses have been sold.
Oculi.
Yeah. Oculi. But I think 1 million to me, I mean, if they sell 1 million, I'm sure that would be a massive amount. But I just feel like there's enough thread boys like us that will be already shelling out
at least 1 million thread boys queuing up for that.
Do you know what I mean? Just exactly. They've automated their work from OpenAI, and now they move on to the next.
There you go. I found, I don't know if this is accurate, but March 1st says Meta has sold nearly 20 million Quest headsets.
I wonder what time frame, because they've been around for a while, I think, right?
Yeah, a long time, I think.
But still.
This is from an internal presentation of Meta. Quest 1, Quest 2, and Quest Pro. I would be willing to bet that the average number of uses of those is in the single digits. Like across all of them, I just think it's I don't know, maybe not. Maybe like kids use them differently than I do, but like after a couple times wearing that thing, you're like, all right, I get it now. It's almost like the Nintendo Wii.
Yeah.
I feel like that it was like a gaming paradigm. It was like, oh, this is novelty, this is cool. And then it just did not have the staying power that you thought it would. We'll see.
Oh, the last thing I'll say on it is I do think right now, because we haven't really seen too many demos of people using it, the two people I respect probably the most in this world are MKBHD, who we already referenced, Marcus Brownlee. I think he does a great job. And then Ben Thompson from a high level, business level technology standpoint. And even Ben Thompson said it's far better than I expected, and I had high expectations. Marcus Brownlee pretty much said something similar as well. He did call out the limitations of it and stuff like that, but he was kind of blown away by it as well. So that's quite exciting. I don't think
they've ever shipped a bad product. I can't remember an Apple product where it's like, oh, this might be niche, but it's not bad. Like
maybe that mouse, the one that you have to charge upside down.
That's stupid, yeah.
But no, you're right.
But they're like, it's just a different level of finish, polish. The standard is just way different. And I don't know, there's the ecosystem itself almost has there's a bar set there. I think the relationship between hardware and software is also like, if you're not deeply into this stuff, you maybe don't think about that very significantly, but it's like, why is the iPhone successful? It's not just because it's a beautiful piece of hardware, it's because the OS is like doing anything else after using an Apple product is maddening. Like trying to go to a Android phone or a Windows computer, for me anyway, is like, how is this even doable? And I know that's like muscle memory on my part.
Yeah, completely, yeah.
But they are incredible, like ecosystems of hardware and software working together. And I think that like Trung has really good takes on this stuff in general, so we'll have to come back and do another.
Definitely. Well, and it's so new because for people listening, I mean, we're recording on our normal time, late Tuesday, and it comes out in the morning. So like every day is more stuff that will come out by this. So by next week, when Trung's hopefully back, we'll get his take. There'll be a full analysis from him, I'm sure. The other thing I mentioned, the 1 million units. From what I can see, that would be around 3 billion in revenue. Which again, for most companies is an incredible amount of money. For them, that's 1% of their sales. So that's to put it in perspective. That's where I think that's actually smart of them too, because they're kind of keeping expectations low in a way of like how much is actually going to get sold. If you said the Quest has sold 20 million, if they even sold 1.1 million, that's like a massive win for them. You know what I mean? So I have a feeling it'll be way more than that, but maybe I guess it's dependent on the time frame we're looking at here. But I will say the last thing from me is really about American innovation. Having been in Europe, as much as I love Europe, and I think there's so many incredible things here about life and the way people live and the balance they strive for here. If you just look at objectively the things we're using that are new, which is obviously what we're interested in, like they just keep doing it, man. You know what I mean? There's American capitalism just bringing it for all the flaws of American capitalism too. But man, like Chat-GPT in the last 6 months been incredible, right? That is a huge paradigm shift. This from Apple, iPhones, obviously, Google, Facebook, Instagram, all the things that have come, but you just forget. We've got so used to it. Like today, my sister got on Uber basically for the first time in her life, which is crazy. She's not even that old. And she just, she has a car. She never really needs an Uber. And she's like, oh, this is so good. And I'm like, yeah, welcome to 2012. What are we talking about here? But it's just like you forget because we're so used to using these products.
That is crazy.
Like how much has happened. And to me, that's the exciting thing. And if you, as this is a not investment advice podcast, even if you just look at the S&P 500, man, like what is driving the growth still, even in a down market, even where growth stocks have been heavily discounted, and all that sort of stuff. This is what's going to make the economy grow. Like if every country in the West is basically in debt and in this massive deficit, which we've talked about on the show, like the only stuff that really gets us out of those problems is increasing productivity and increasing, creating things that take take us forward. And this is a great example of that. So it's quite exciting times, man.
You know what's funny? When I was like watching the presentation on mute yesterday. I was doing something, just had it in the background, and even the like little examples they use at different points in time is like my Instacart delivery, my Uber is here, my like it's like stuff that if you know 50 years ago you'd be like, that is meant, like that is a future that I cannot even imagine. What
exactly?
Like, somebody's made this comparison way more eloquently than me, but it's like technology. The private driver, for example, was something that you only had access to if you were born into a certain bloodline. Yeah, like there's a couple dozen people in the entire country you live in that have access to that level of technology or that, you know, that quality of life. And weirdly, like, the stuff we look at and think of as like, you know, not that significant is crazy.
That we
and
got
sometimes
used to,
even in your every day is crazy. It's like the ability to, just like summon a vehicle to take you wherever you want to go is
honestly just searching the world's information, man. Like beyond Google, like even Chat-GPT, like the stuff.
Insane.
Like my little nephew's here who's into science mad, which is amazing. And the amount of stuff, we're literally talking about stuff, and he's like, oh, those are the red platelets and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, man, you're 6. Like, what is going on here? And he's just been on the YouTube Kids rabbit hole. And the amount of stuff he's just absorbing is incredible, right? And it's just really cool to see, because if you think what we were taking in at that age, as much as we got, you know, we were early on the internet, we were taking in probably a lot more than an average kid. But at 6, I was watching Rugrats. Do you know what I mean? I was not watching, like he was talking about Mr. Beast, actually. And he was talking about, oh, I want to help the environment. And he's talking about like, which is, you know, that's his own thing. But he's talking about Mr. Beast helped cure people's hearing. And he gave away this to someone. It's like, just, again, you can think whatever you want about Mr. Beast, right? But the fact that he's getting examples like that, and my example a few years later was Rick Ross selling, you know, whatever, like obviously I'm semi-joking, but that is I mean, he's going to get plenty of that in time as well, but it's incredible exposure. And I think we, you know, obviously lose track of that sometimes because there's a lot of negative stuff as well on the internet. And so that is kind of crazy. You forget like someone like him who's got YouTube Kids where it's filtered information, where it's generally educational stuff. And like Minecraft, he's just watching people play Minecraft on there for hours. It's crazy. It's just, it's incredible, man.
I will you know, the like people say like you're a dinosaur, you know, like you're basically your consumption of media shapes your worldview, right? Like even my house growing up, there's 5 TV channels. 5.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
So you're like,
BBC
you go to
1,
school.
2, ITV,
we
Channel
watched
4,
this
Channel 5.
last night. We recorded this. We're going to watch that tomorrow. Yeah, it's just the same thing. And
do you remember it was 4 channels at first, and then Channel 5 came around.
I remember that. Yeah.
And everyone's like, wow, we got a whole other channel. Is that mad? We thought we were crazy.
Now it's just infinite, you know, completely custom, tailored. And I think that you can basically argue both sides of that, right? It's completely tailored to your curiosity. You'll never be bored again. I think I read that somewhere recently as like, can't remember the last time I was bored. You know, when I was growing up, like, there were legitimate times like, I'm so bored right now. Like, what am I going to do?
What am I going to do? Yeah. Just start kicking. You find a rock and just start trying to kick it against the wall like it's a football or something.
Yeah.
Which
that
still,
feeling just doesn't exist.
Yeah, that is an interesting thing as well, though, on a negative side of, you know, our level of our baseline of what it takes to be entertained has gone up so much. And me being massive, you know, I'm not looking at other people, like I'm saying myself, right? Like TikTok brain hyperdrive. And I'm even seeing like my dad, like as he's rediscovered social media through Twitter, basically in 2023 or 2022, really. And we're so used to like putting our phone on Do Not Disturb, and, you know, putting it away and like trying to limit our use, right? Because we know how much it can mess with our brain. But he's just there like taking it in because it's dopamine. And he probably is not aware as much because for him,
3,000 followers, man. Now hit you.
Yeah, that's what happens. You know what I mean? Yeah. He would start going ham.
He's on the Trung train now.
He's on the train. Yeah, seriously though. But it is kind of interesting to see, like, you know, I always reference the adoption curve of like, innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority laggards, and just you see that I just see that playing out in my life. With, like I said, with my mum with a writing course, my dad like going ham on Twitter.
That's
like,
crazy, yeah. That's
mad.
And
like, it is kind of cool to see that. That's one of the few things I learned at university that actually I see in real life all the time, and was
you
worth
get back
me
there
learning.
next summer, and they're all going to be in headsets, mate.
Yeah, exactly.
Sitting on the sofa.
Anyway, man, I think we can probably call it here, unless you had anything else to add on that.
No, that was good.
Good catch up. We'll get Trung's thoughts, the lowdown. I think by next week we'll have a lot more lowdown on the Apple announcements. Plus, there'll be a lot more analysis of it by then. We can read Ben Thompson's take and regurgitate it to you guys. So that'll be
we'll just watch
week.
YouTube videos and then give you a poor translation of them. 45 minutes.
Yeah. You mean we'll take 20 minutes of MKBHD and turn it into a 45-minute podcast right now? Yeah, exactly.
And only mentioned about 10% of what he said. Yeah,
exactly. Anyway, well, hope you guys enjoyed that. Thanks again. Good to have us two back at least, and hopefully next week we'll get all three of us back. Fingers crossed. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you guys then. Cheers. Bye-bye.
All right, boys.